Ethan walked through the endless red sands of the desolate planet, his boots sinking slightly with every step. The sky above was a pale orange, streaked with dust storms that rolled across the horizon. The planet had been abandoned for centuries, or so he believed. Broken cities, crumbling towers, and shattered roads lay scattered, remnants of a civilization long gone. Yet for Ethan, it was not just ruins, it was opportunity. Every broken wall and half-buried structure held something valuable, something that could help him survive another day. He carried a worn satchel on his back, filled with water, dried food, and tools scavenged from previous explorations. In his hand, he held a small metal detector, waving it cautiously over the sand as he searched for anything that might be worth keeping. Ethan was clever and careful. He had learned over the years that even a single mistake could cost him his life in a place like this. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, burning the planet's surface, but Ethan did not rest. He was driven by curiosity, by the sense that this planet still held secrets no one had yet discovered. And then, in the distance, something unusual caught his eye, a structure partially buried in the sand. Its stone walls cracked and worn, yet somehow still standing. As he approached, he realized it was a temple. Its entrance was dark, shadowed, and covered in strange markings he did not recognize. Ethan felt a strange chill in the air, even though the sun was hot on his back. Something about this place felt important. He could not explain it, but he knew he had to enter. The temple door was heavy, made of metal and stone, but Ethan was strong and careful. With a push, it groaned and shifted open, revealing a hall filled with dust and broken statues. Light filtered in through cracks in the walls, illuminating symbols etched into the floor. The air smelled ancient, like stone that had not seen wind or rain for centuries. Ethan walked slowly, examining the hall. His eyes caught something unusual at the far end, a raised stone platform with a sword embedded in it. The sword was old, covered in rust, yet it radiated a strange energy that he could feel even from a distance. It looked as if it had been waiting for him or someone like him to find it. He stepped closer, his heart beating faster. The sword was unlike any he had seen before. Its hilt was carved with symbols similar to those on the temple walls, and a faint glow seemed to shimmer around the blade. Ethan reached out, hesitating for only a moment before gripping the handle. It was heavier than it looked, but the weight felt right, natural, as if it belonged in his hand. With a deep breath, he pulled. The sword came free smoothly, almost as if it had been waiting for this moment. The air around him seemed to hum with energy. The light in the temple flickered, and a low vibration resonated through the stone floor. Ethan stepped back, startled. What is this?" he whispered to himself, turning the sword over in his hands. It was rusty, old, but undeniably powerful. He felt a strange connection to it, a warmth that spread through his arm and into his chest. It was as if the sword recognized him, or he recognized it. Ethan could not tell which. Unseen by him, 3 figures watched from the shadows outside the temple. They were aliens, tall and lithe, with glowing eyes and long, graceful limbs. They had been waiting for this moment for centuries. The sword had been a test, a seal, a key to a destiny they had believed lost forever. As Ethan lifted the blade, one of them whispered, "He is the one. The lost emperor has returned." Ethan did not hear them. He was too focused on the sword. He did not understand what it meant or why he felt the sudden rush of strength coursing through his body. He sheathed the blade in the worn scabbard strapped to his side and began exploring the rest of the temple. As he moved through the hallways, doors that had been sealed for hundreds of years slowly opened before him. Holographic images flickered to life on the walls, showing scenes of warriors, starships, and cities he had never seen. Ethan froze, watching as the images told a story he could not fully understand. Yet somehow it felt familiar. A memory that was not his own stirred deep within him. He moved carefully, avoiding traps and crumbling floors. The temple seemed alive, guiding him, testing him. He found rooms filled with ancient weapons, strange artifacts, and devices that hummed with power. Every item he touched seemed to resonate with the sword, as if they were part of a larger whole. Ethan realized that he had stumbled upon something much greater than he had ever imagined. Hours passed as he explored. He found no one else in the temple, only the echoes of the past. Yet he could not shake the feeling that he was being watched. The shadows seemed to move with purpose, and strange whispers brushed against his mind, faint and unintelligible. He shook his head, trying to clear the thoughts. He was alone, at least he thought he was. When he finally left the temple, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the red sands. Ethan looked back at the ruins. The sword hung at his side, heavy with mystery and power. He felt a strange sense of destiny pressing against him, though he did not know why. The alien watchers had disappeared, leaving him to his fate. They would return, of course. Their reports would travel fast across the galaxy. The human had awakened the ancient sword, and with it the prophecy of the long-lost emperor was now in motion. But Ethan remained unaware. He thought he had simply found an old relic, a curiosity in a dead world. As he began his journey back to the small settlement where he lived, the desert around him seemed to hum with life. Small creatures scuttled in the sand, and the wind carried whispers that sounded almost like words. Ethan tightened his grip on the sword, feeling its weight and its strange warmth. He had no idea that his life had just changed forever. Night fell and the stars appeared in the vast sky. Ethan made a small camp, lighting a fire and preparing a simple meal. He looked at the sword again, turning it over in his hands. "I wonder what you were doing here all this time," he said softly. The sword did not answer, of course, but the hum of energy seemed to pulse in agreement, as if acknowledging his words. Sleep came slowly. Ethan dreamed of vast cities, towering starships, and a throne that gleamed with gold and jewels. In his dream, a voice spoke to him deep and commanding. "Rise, Emperor. Your time has come." Ethan woke with a start, sweating and confused. It had been a dream, he told himself. Only a dream. Yet when he looked at the sword beside him, he felt a strange certainty. Something had awakened. Something important. Something that would change not just his life, but the fate of the worlds beyond the red sands. And so, with the first light of dawn, Ethan packed his things and set off once more. He did not know where the path would lead, or what dangers awaited him. He did not know that he was now considered the long-lost emperor, a figure of prophecy whose return would shake the galaxy. All he knew was that the sword at his side felt like a part of him, and that feeling gave him courage. The desert stretched out endlessly before him, filled with ruins, secrets, and challenges. But Ethan walked forward with determination. He was alone, yet he carried a power that no one else could understand. The adventure of his life had just begun, and the echoes of the past were already calling him forward. The rusty sword was no longer just an artifact. It was a key, a guide, and a warning. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the future waited, and Ethan would face it, unprepared, unaware, but undeniably ready in ways he could not yet comprehend. The first step of the lost emperor had been taken, and the galaxy would never be the same. The morning sun rose over the red sands, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. Ethan had spent the night near a small cluster of rocks trying to make sense of the strange events in the temple. The rusty sword hung at his side, heavy yet comforting, as if it had a life of its own. He tightened his grip on it, feeling the warmth and faint hum of energy that still lingered from the temple. Ethan had no idea what lay ahead. The desert was quiet, but it held dangers he could not yet see. Small creatures scuttled beneath the rocks, and distant sandstorms formed dark lines on the horizon. Yet something deeper than survival pulled him forward, a sense that the sword had a purpose, and that he had awakened something far greater than himself. As he walked, the sword seemed to guide him. It was subtle at first. He would feel a gentle pull in his hand toward certain paths, avoiding dangerous cliffs and unstable ground. Occasionally, the hum of the sword would rise, warning him of unseen dangers. Ethan began to trust it, learning that it was more than a weapon. It was a companion, a guide, and a protector. Hours later, he came across a group of scavengers, aliens who had made the desert their home. They were tall, thin, with glowing markings on their arms, and they carried sharp, jagged weapons. When they saw Ethan, they immediately assumed he was weak, an ordinary human wandering too close to their territory. But Ethan was not ordinary. When one of the aliens lunged forward with a spiked staff, the sword guided his movements. He dodged with a speed he did not know he possessed, and with a single sweep, the rusty blade struck the staff aside, forcing the attacker back. The others hesitated, unsure how this human could move with such precision. Ethan did not understand it himself. The sword felt alive in his hands, responding to danger before his mind even registered it. Every movement seemed instinctual, as if he were channeling the skills of someone long gone. The aliens backed away, murmuring to each other. Ethan seized the moment to speak. "I don't want trouble," he said, keeping the sword ready. "I'm just passing through." One of the aliens, taller than the rest and with a crown-like marking on his forehead, stepped forward. "You are not ordinary," he said in a voice that was calm but firm. "That sword? It belongs to the Lost Emperor. Only he can wield it," Ethan frowned. "The Lost Emperor? I don't understand. I'm just a human trying to survive." The alien studied him, his glowing eyes narrowing. "You may not remember, but the sword recognizes you. The prophecy speaks of a human who will return and unite the fractured worlds. You are he." Ethan laughed nervously, shaking his head. "That's impossible." "I'm just Ethan. I don't know anything about prophecies or lost emperors." The alien did not argue. Instead, he stepped aside and gestured for Ethan to follow. Reluctantly, Ethan agreed. They traveled together, moving across the desert toward a hidden settlement the alien called the Watcher's Outpost. Along the way, Ethan learned that the desert had been a place of refuge for those who remembered the old empire. The Watchers had waited for centuries, guarding knowledge and relics that had survived the collapse of the old civilization. When they reached the outpost, Ethan was surprised by its size. It was a collection of towers and platforms built into the cliffs, powered by solar crystals and old technology that still functioned. Aliens moved quickly and efficiently, maintaining the defenses and equipment. Yet when they saw Ethan, a sense of awe passed through the group. Whispers of, "The Emperor has returned," spread quickly, though Ethan remained unaware of the full meaning. Inside the main hall, holographic maps and records flickered to life. The leader of the Watchers approached him. "You do not remember, do you?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but there was a weight of expectation behind it. Ethan shook his head. "No, I don't even know who I am supposed to be." "You are Ethan, yes," she said. "But you are also the descendant of the human who once ruled many worlds. The sword chose you because the blood of the Emperor runs in your veins. You are the one foretold in prophecy." Ethan's mind raced. "But I've never been a ruler. I've never led anyone. I'm just me." The leader smiled faintly. "That is why the sword chose you. It does not seek the one who wants power. It seeks the one who has courage, wisdom, and heart. You have survived where others would fail. You have the potential to rise." Ethan felt a mixture of fear and excitement. He had always been a survivor, but now he faced a destiny larger than he could imagine. He walked to the center of the hall, the sword in his hand. The hum of the blade seemed louder here, resonating with the crystals and technology. Holographic images projected scenes of battles, starships, and emperors, showing him the history he had inherited. One of the Watchers placed a hand on his shoulder. "You must learn quickly. The overlords who destroyed the Empire still hold power. They sense your awakening. They will try to stop you before you understand what you must do." Ethan swallowed hard. "Stop me? How?" "I'm just one person." "You are more than one person," the alien replied. "The sword is not just a weapon. It carries the knowledge, skills, and memories of those who wielded it before. You will learn. But first you must train and understand who you are meant to be." The days that followed were intense. Ethan trained with the sword, learning its movements, its power, and its strange connection to him. It guided his hands, teaching him techniques that felt like second nature. He practiced against simulated enemies, against training droids, and even in the desert, facing harsh winds and uneven terrain. With every swing, every movement, Ethan felt a change within himself. He was becoming stronger, faster, and smarter. His confidence grew, though so did the weight of responsibility. He knew that this training was only the beginning, that the moment would come when he would have to face enemies far greater than he could imagine. One night, as he rested near the cliffs of the outpost, he saw lights moving in the sky. Ships, sleek and dark, approached with speed. Ethan knew immediately that they were not friendly. His heart pounded. "The overlords," he whispered. The Watchers prepared defenses, but Ethan felt a surge of calm. The sword hummed strongly in his hands as if it was ready for battle. He stepped forward, facing the approaching threat, feeling a strange connection to the warriors who had once wielded this weapon. He did not fully understand it, but he trusted it. The first ship landed nearby, and armored aliens disembarked, their weapons ready. Ethan tightened his grip on the sword. "I don't know who I'm supposed to be," he said aloud, "but I will not let you harm them." The battle began. The overlords struck with precision and strength. but Ethan moved with an agility and skill that surprised even him. The sword guided him, deflecting blows, breaking weapons, and creating openings. The Watchers joined him, inspired by his courage and determination. By the end of the fight, the overlords had been forced to retreat. Ethan stood amidst the ruins of the landing site, panting and exhausted. The sword, though rusty, glowed faintly in the moonlight, as if acknowledging his efforts. The Watchers gathered around him. "You have done well," said their leader, "but this is only the beginning. They will return, and so will others who seek to challenge the prophecy. You must continue to grow, to learn, and to lead. The galaxy awaits the lost emperor, and that emperor is you." Ethan looked at the sword, feeling its strange warmth and power. He still did not fully understand who he was or what he was meant to do. But he knew one thing: he could not turn back. He had been chosen, whether he understood it or not, and the path ahead would be dangerous and uncertain. As the night stretched on, Ethan stood on the cliffs overlooking the desert. Stars shimmered in the vast sky, and he felt the weight of destiny pressing on his shoulders. He was just one human, yet somehow he had been given the chance to change the fate of many worlds. The rusty sword at his side was no longer just a relic. It was a guide, a teacher, and a symbol of hope. And Ethan, the human who had once wandered alone in the desert, was now on the path to becoming something far greater than he had ever imagined: the long-lost emperor of the galaxy. The sun rose slowly over the desert cliffs, casting long shadows across the red sands. Ethan stood at the edge of the Watcher's outpost, holding the rusty sword at his side. His muscles ached from the training and the battle the night before, but his mind was sharper than ever. He had begun to understand something remarkable. The sword was not just a weapon. It was a guide, a teacher, and somehow it knew things he did not. He had learned how to anticipate attacks, how to move with speed and precision, and how to use the energy in the sword to protect himself. But more than anything, Ethan realized that the sword was awakening something inside him: confidence, courage, and a sense of destiny he had never known. "Ethan," a voice called from behind. He turned to see Leora, one of the leaders of the Watchers. Her glowing eyes showed both respect and concern. "You've done well, but the overlords will not give up so easily. They will return with more ships, more soldiers. We need you to lead, to show them that the prophecy is true." Ethan looked at her, uncertainty written across his face. "Lead? I'm just one person. I don't know how to lead armies or unite planets. I don't even know how I'm supposed to do this." Leora stepped closer. "You've already started, whether you know it or not. You've inspired us, and the sword recognizes you. Others will follow when they see your courage. You are the lost emperor, Ethan, and the galaxy needs you." Ethan nodded slowly, still unsure, but he felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He knew that running away was no longer an option. Whatever awaited him beyond the desert, he would face it, because the sword had chosen him, and he could not ignore that call. The next days were filled with preparation. The Watchers helped Ethan repair his gear, strengthen the outpost defenses, and study ancient records of the Empire. The holographic maps revealed the locations of key planets, old allies, and enemy strongholds. Ethan studied them carefully, realizing that the overlords still controlled vast territories. They were organized, ruthless, and powerful. But the sword, and the sense of destiny it carried, gave him hope. One morning, scouts arrived with news. A small fleet of overlord ships had been spotted near a nearby planet. Their mission was clear: locate the human who had awakened the sword and eliminate him. Ethan tightened his grip on the blade. "Then we stop them before they reach anyone else," he said. The Watchers nodded, trusting him. They had seen the sword's power in action and the courage it inspired. Now it was time to act. Ethan and a small team of Watchers boarded a transport ship, the rusty sword secured in a special holder. The journey through space was tense, filled with anticipation and worry. Ethan could feel the sword humming, almost as if it knew the danger ahead. When they arrived near the planet, the Overlord fleet was waiting. Ships hovered in the atmosphere, weapons charging, ready to strike. Ethan took a deep breath and looked at the Watchers. "We fight smart, not just strong," he said. "We use our knowledge, our speed, and the element of surprise. Follow me." The battle began. Ethan led the small team through asteroid fields and between rocky canyons, avoiding the main fleet's weapons. The sword guided him, glowing faintly whenever danger approached. With its help, he deflected energy blasts and disarmed enemy drones with precise movements. The Watchers fought bravely alongside him, but it was clear that Ethan's leadership made the difference. His courage inspired them, his strategies kept them alive, and his skill with the sword made the enemy hesitant. Even the overlords began to doubt their success, seeing a human move with the precision of a seasoned warrior. During the fight, Ethan faced a particularly large drone, its weapons aimed directly at the transport carrying the Watchers. He charged forward, the sword humming with energy. The rusty blade seemed to grow lighter, faster, as if responding to his determination. With a single fluid movement, he deflected the drone's attack, struck its core, and disabled it completely. The Watchers cheered, but Ethan did not celebrate. He knew this was only the beginning. The overlords would not stop. They would only grow stronger and send more forces. He had to learn, adapt, and unite allies if he wanted to survive, and if he wanted to fulfill the prophecy. After the battle, they landed on the planet's surface. The overlord ships had retreated, but their presence was a warning. Ethan looked around at the barren land, the small outpost of survivors and the Watchers who had trusted him. He realized that leadership was not just about fighting. It was about hope, strategy, and showing others that they could rise above fear. That night, around a small fire, Ethan trained the Watchers in sword techniques he had learned from the blade. They practiced movements, defensive stances, and coordinated attacks. Even though the rusty sword had once seemed like a relic, its power was now teaching them skills long forgotten. One of the Watchers, a young alien named Kale, asked, "Ethan, how do you know what to do? How do you know you can lead us?" Ethan looked at him and smiled faintly. "I don't know for sure. I just trust the sword. It shows me the way, and when I act, I try to think of what's best for all of us, not just myself. Leadership is not about knowing everything. It's about making the right choices when it matters most." Kyle nodded, inspired. The others listened quietly, understanding that their human companion was more than just a survivor. He was becoming a symbol, someone who could unite them against impossible odds. The days that followed were filled with small victories and lessons. Ethan learned to communicate with the sword, sensing danger before it arrived. He discovered ancient techniques etched into its blade, moves that allowed him to disarm enemies and defend himself with minimal effort. Slowly, he began to feel the connection between himself and the sword more clearly, as if it were an extension of his body. But not all days were victories. Scouts reported that overlord patrols had captured civilians on nearby planets. Entire settlements had been enslaved, and many had been forced to work in harsh conditions. Ethan felt a deep anger rise within him, but the sword's hum reminded him to act wisely, not recklessly. Impulsiveness could cost lives. He gathered the Watchers and shared a plan. "We cannot save everyone at once," he said, "but we can start here. We strike strategically, free those we can, and give hope to those who remain. Our actions will show the overlords that we are not afraid, that we are stronger than they think." The Watchers agreed, trusting him completely. Together they planned a series of raids on overlord facilities, using stealth, strategy, and the power of the sword to succeed. Each mission brought new challenges but also new lessons. Ethan learned the importance of patience, observation, and using intelligence over brute force. Through it all, the sword guided him. Sometimes he would feel a pull toward certain paths or enemies, almost like it knew the best way to approach a battle. Other times he would sense danger long before it arrived, giving him the advantage in fights that seemed impossible. Slowly he began to understand the true meaning of the prophecy. One evening, as they camped on a cliff overlooking a small city, Ethan stared at the stars and thought about the path ahead. He knew the overlords would return, stronger and more determined than ever. He knew that his role as the lost emperor was just beginning. But he also felt something else, hope. The sword had chosen him, yes, but it had also shown him that courage, intelligence, and heart were just as important as strength. And with the Watchers by his side, he knew that he could face whatever challenges awaited him. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "we begin a new chapter. We fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone who cannot fight, and maybe, just maybe, we will show the galaxy that even a single human can make a difference." The desert winds blew softly across the cliffs, carrying the hum of the sword and the promise of destiny. Ethan rested, knowing that the battles ahead would be difficult, but also knowing that he was no longer alone. He had allies, purpose, and the power of a legacy that had waited for centuries to awaken. And so, the lost emperor's journey continued. Each day brought new challenges, new victories, and new lessons. Ethan's courage and skill grew, as did his understanding of the sword and the prophecy. The overlords were still out there, but the galaxy had a new force to reckon with, a human who had picked up a rusty sword and unknowingly awakened a destiny that could change everything. The desert sun sank behind jagged cliffs, painting the sky in deep shades of orange and purple. Ethan stood at the edge of a high plateau, the rusty sword in his hand glowing faintly in the dim light. His mind raced with everything that had happened over the past weeks, the battles, the training, the victories, and the moments of fear. But tonight something different filled him. A quiet feeling of destiny, of something larger than himself, settled over him like a cloak. The watchers gathered around him, their eyes full of trust and expectation. "Ethan," Leora said softly, "we have uncovered something important. A hidden archive on a nearby planet may hold the answers you seek about your ancestry. It is time you understand who you truly are." Ethan looked at the sword, feeling its familiar hum. "I've learned a lot already," he said, "but I still don't know why this sword chose me or why I am me." "You are not just you," Leora said. "You are the descendant of the long-lost emperor. Your bloodline, your spirit, and your courage all connect to the past. The archive will reveal your history, and with that knowledge you can unite the worlds against the overlords." Ethan nodded. He had faced enemies, led the Watchers, and survived battles he could not have imagined. Still, the thought of discovering his true identity filled him with both excitement and fear. He had lived his life as a simple human, a survivor in a harsh galaxy. Now he was being asked to step into a role that had shaped history itself. The journey to the archive planet was long. The Watcher's transport ship moved swiftly through asteroid fields and past small moons. Ethan spent the time meditating with the sword, feeling its energy and listening to the faint whispers that seemed to guide him. Each hum, each vibration carried a lesson. It taught him patience, focus, and courage. Slowly, he began to understand the connection between himself, the sword, and the legacy he had inherited. When the planet came into view, Ethan was struck by its beauty. Unlike the harsh desert, this world was filled with green valleys, blue rivers, and towering crystal mountains. It was a place of history, a world that had once been central to the empire his ancestors had ruled. Yet the signs of decay were there, too. Old fortresses in ruins, abandoned cities, and technology that had not been maintained for centuries. The Watchers guided Ethan to the entrance of the hidden archive, a massive structure carved into the side of a crystal mountain. Symbols similar to those on the sword and in the temple glowed faintly along the walls. Ethan felt the sword vibrate with energy as if it recognized the place. Inside, the archive was vast and silent. Holographic records floated in mid-air, displaying images of past emperors, starships, battles, and ancient civilizations. Ethan walked slowly, absorbing the history, the triumphs, and the failures of his ancestors. Every step seemed to bring him closer to understanding the prophecy, the sword, and himself. Leora guided him to a central chamber where a holographic throne stood surrounded by images of rulers from long ago. "This is where the emperor's lineage was recorded," she explained. "Here you will see the truth of your heritage." Ethan approached the throne and touched the holographic display. A flood of visions entered his mind, memories that were not his own. He saw a great leader, wise and brave, uniting planets under a banner of peace. He saw the emperor wielding a sword much like his own, leading armies into battle and negotiating treaties that lasted centuries. He saw his own face among these images, younger but unmistakably his. He staggered back, overwhelmed. I am him?" he whispered, disbelief in his voice. "Yes," Leora said gently. "You are the last living descendant of the emperor. The sword recognized your bloodline and your spirit. You have inherited not just the weapon, but the legacy, the responsibility, and the destiny." Ethan's mind spun. He had trained, fought, and survived, but the weight of this revelation was enormous. He was no longer just a human wandering a desert. He was a leader, a symbol, a figure whose return could unite or destroy worlds. As he processed this, alarms suddenly blared throughout the archive. The overlords had discovered their presence. Ships appeared in the sky, dark and menacing, ready to strike. Ethan felt the sword hum violently as if urging him into action. Leora and the Watchers moved quickly to defend the archive, but Ethan knew this was his moment. He stepped forward, the sword in his hands, feeling the energy coursing through him. For the first time he felt a deep connection, not just to the sword but to the long line of emperors who had come before him. The battle began. Overlord drones and soldiers poured into the chamber, but Ethan moved with unmatched speed and precision. The sword guided him, deflecting energy blasts, cutting through barriers, and protecting the Watchers. Each movement was instinctive, powerful, and graceful, as if the knowledge of generations flowed through his hands. He felt the presence of the past emperors in the sword, their courage and wisdom guiding him. He realized that he did not fight alone. The sword carried the experience of countless leaders who had faced impossible odds. With every strike, every maneuver, Ethan became more than a human. He became a force to be reckoned with, the living embodiment of a legend long thought lost. By the time the battle ended, the overlords had been repelled, retreating with fury and confusion. The archive was safe, but Ethan knew it was only temporary. Their enemies would not rest, yet in that moment he felt a surge of confidence. He was no longer just Ethan. He was the lost emperor, and he had begun to embrace his destiny. In the aftermath, Ethan and the Watchers explored the archive further. He discovered ancient strategies, maps of forgotten worlds, and records of allies who might still be found. Every piece of knowledge strengthened him, preparing him for the challenges ahead. He realized that leading the galaxy was not just about fighting, it was about understanding, planning, and inspiring others to follow. That night, Ethan stood atop the crystal mountain, gazing at the stars. He felt a connection to the past, to the sword, and to the destiny that lay before him. The journey had been long, the battles difficult, but he had begun to understand the weight and the purpose of his role. Leora joined him quietly. "You have changed," she said. "You are no longer just a survivor. You are a leader. The galaxy will remember this moment." Ethan looked at the sword, its rusty surface now glowing with a steady light. "I don't know if I'm ready for everything," he admitted, "but I know I cannot turn back. There is too much at stake, too many lives depending on what I do next." "And you will not face it alone," Leora said. "The Watchers are with you, and soon others will join. The lost emperor has returned, and his influence will grow. But remember this, leadership is not about power. It is about courage, wisdom, and heart. Never forget that." Ethan nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose. He was ready to face the challenges ahead, to learn from the past and to lead others toward a better future. He had awakened as a survivor, but he would rise as an emperor. The next morning, Ethan and the Watchers prepared to leave the archive planet. They carried knowledge, strategy, and hope with them, ready to unite the scattered allies of the old empire. The overlords would continue to fight, but the galaxy had a new force, a human who had picked up a rusty sword, who had discovered his true heritage, and who was beginning to embrace his destiny as the long-lost emperor. As the transport ship lifted off, Ethan looked out at the planet below. The stars stretched endlessly before him, and he felt the weight of history, prophecy, and responsibility pressing on his shoulders. But he also felt something stronger, the certainty that he was not alone, that he was ready, and that the future, though uncertain, could be shaped by courage, wisdom, and the legacy he had inherited. The journey ahead would be dangerous, filled with battles, alliances, and choices that would determine the fate of many worlds. But for the first time, Ethan did not feel fear. He felt determination. He felt purpose. He felt the power of the sword and the presence of the emperors who had come before him. The galaxy waited, unaware that the lost emperor had returned. And Ethan, once a simple human wandering a desert, now carried the weight and hope of countless worlds in his hands. The galaxy was alive with tension. News of the lost emperor's awakening had spread across star systems, reaching planets loyal to the old empire and territories controlled by the overlords. Ethan stood on the bridge of the Watcher's flagship, the rusty sword resting in a special harness beside him. The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewing window, and beyond them, fleets of ships gathered, preparing for a confrontation that could decide the fate of countless worlds. Ethan's heart beat steadily. though excitement and fear mingled in his chest. He had trained, learned the truth of his ancestry, and inspired the Watchers. Yet now he faced the ultimate challenge, confronting the overlords directly, uniting scattered allies and proving that the lost emperor was more than a legend. Leora approached, her glowing eyes full of determination. Ethan, reports indicate the overlords are massing near the shattered nebula. They have captured several allied planets and are preparing to strike at the heart of the Empire's old territories. Ethan nodded, gripping the hilt of the sword. Then we act, he said. We strike before they can consolidate their power. We show them that the galaxy is no longer theirs to control. The Watchers rallied around him. Aliens from allied systems, inspired by rumors of the lost emperor, had begun joining their forces. Soldiers, engineers, and strategists gathered, ready to fight under Ethan's leadership. The sight of him holding the rusty sword with confidence and purpose stirred hope in even the most battle-weary allies. As the fleet moved toward the shattered nebula, Ethan reviewed plans with Leora. They would strike in coordinated waves, using stealth ships to disable key defenses while the main fleet engaged the overlords directly. Ethan's knowledge from the archive gave them an advantage. They knew the locations of supply lines, weak points in the overlord ships, and the strategies the enemy would likely use. The first battle began near a cluster of asteroid fields. The overlord ships were numerous, heavily armed, and merciless. Ethan led a squadron of fighters, maneuvering through the debris with the sword's guidance echoing in his mind. Energy shields flared, lasers streaked past, and explosions lit the dark void of space. Every movement Ethan made felt instinctive, as if he carried the experience of generations of emperors within him. During the fight, Ethan spotted an enormous flagship at the center of the enemy formation. Its size and firepower made it a terrifying target. Yet the sword vibrated in his hands, guiding his instincts. He signaled the Watchers to focus on disabling smaller ships first, creating an opening to strike at the flagship's core. The plan worked. Overlord ships fell one by one, and the flagship, exposed and vulnerable, became Ethan's target. He maneuvered his fighter with precision, using the sword as a guide to avoid enemy fire and find the perfect angle. With a final daring strike, he and a small squadron fired coordinated energy blasts directly at the flagship's command center. The massive ship shuddered and exploded in a blaze of light, sending debris across the nebula. Victory came at a cost. Several allied ships had been damaged, and the Watchers mourned the loss of brave souls who had fought with courage. Ethan felt the weight of leadership, knowing that every decision affected countless lives. Yet he also felt pride. He had faced the overlords head-on and emerged victorious, proving that the lost emperor was real, and that he could inspire hope even in the darkest moments. After the battle, the fleet regrouped near a neutral planet. Ethan held a council with allied leaders, sharing strategies and coordinating defenses. The overlords will not stop, he said. We must unite our forces, strengthen our alliances, and strike with precision. Our goal is not just to fight. They must know that the galaxy no longer belongs to them alone. The allies listened intently, their faith in him growing stronger. Ethan's words, backed by his skill and courage, gave them confidence. He was no longer just a survivor or a wandering human. He was a leader, a symbol, a living embodiment of the Empire's legacy. In the following weeks, Ethan led a series of coordinated strikes, freeing captured planets, rallying isolated allies, and disrupting the overlord's supply chains. Each mission was challenging, yet the sword guided him, helping him make split-second decisions that saved lives and ensured victories. The stories of the lost emperor spread across the galaxy, inspiring hope in oppressed populations and fear in the hearts of the overlords. Finally, the stage was set for the ultimate confrontation. The overlords had gathered their remaining forces near a massive space station, orbiting a resource-rich planet. It was a fortress, heavily defended and nearly impossible to attack directly. Yet Ethan had a plan. Using knowledge from the archive, he identified a hidden route through an asteroid belt that would allow his fleet to approach undetected. Ethan stood on the flagship's bridge, the sword beside him. He looked at the assembled fleet, feeling a deep connection to each ship, each soldier, each ally who had trusted him. Today, he said, his voice steady, we end this, not through fear or anger, but through courage, unity, and the knowledge that we fight for more than ourselves. We fight for the galaxy. The fleet responded with a roar of engines and weapons, surging forward through the asteroid belt. The overlords were caught off guard, their defenses unprepared for an attack from that direction. Ethan led the charge, the sword guiding him as he coordinated every strike. The battle was intense. Energy blasts lit the darkness, ships collided, and the sound of alarms echoed through the flagship. Ethan moved like a force of nature, deflecting attacks, directing squads, and striking at key targets. Every action was precise, every decision critical. Yet he felt the presence of the sword and the legacy of the emperors who had come before him, giving him strength and clarity. Finally, Ethan faced the Overlord commander, a massive figure clad in black armor, wielding weapons of immense power. They clashed, energy against energy, sword against blade. Ethan felt the rush of the sword guiding him, every strike flowing naturally, as if the experience of centuries of emperors was within him. He fought not just for himself, but for all those who believed in him, for the people who could not fight, and for the hope of the galaxy. With a final, decisive move, Ethan disarmed the commander and struck a precise blow that incapacitated him without taking his life. The Overlord forces, seeing their leader defeated, surrendered. Cheers erupted across the fleet as the remaining enemies were captured or forced to retreat. Ethan stood on the flagship's deck, the sword glowing faintly at his side. He looked at the fleet, at the liberated planets, and at the Watchers who had trusted him from the beginning. The prophecy had been fulfilled, not through destiny alone, but through courage, wisdom, and heart. The galaxy began to heal. Planets once under the Overlord's control returned to their people. Alliances were formed, and the legacy of the old empire was restored. Ethan, once a wandering human with a rusty sword, had become the long-lost emperor, a unifying figure whose courage and leadership had changed the course of history. He did not take the throne immediately. Instead, he focused on teaching, guiding, and helping the galaxy rebuild. The sword remained at his side, a symbol of legacy and connection to the past. He knew that challenges would arise again, but the lessons he had learned, the importance of unity, courage, and wisdom, would guide him and those who followed him. One evening, as he stood on a cliff overlooking a newly liberated city, Ethan reflected on his journey. He had started as a simple human, lost in a desert, unaware of his heritage. He had picked up a rusty sword, trained, fought, and embraced a destiny he had never imagined. And now he looked forward, knowing that the galaxy was not just his responsibility, but his opportunity to inspire hope and unity. Leora joined him silently. "You've done it," she said. "The galaxy remembers the lost emperor, and your story will be told for generations." Ethan smiled, looking at the sword. "I didn't do it alone," he said. "The sword guided me, yes. But it was the courage of the Watchers, the hope of our allies, and the belief that even one person can make a difference that changed everything." The stars twinkled above, endless and full of promise. Ethan felt the weight of the past, the power of the present, and the hope for the future. The lost emperor had returned, not just as a ruler, but as a symbol of what courage, wisdom, and heart could achieve. The galaxy had been saved, the overlords defeated, and a new era had begun. And Ethan, the human who had once wandered alone in a desert with a rusty sword, now stood as a leader, a protector, and a legend, a lost emperor whose story would inspire generations to come.